Do you ever have the feeling your employees don't listen to you? Hey, Ben here from JobNimbus with the Building Business channel. I've got Chris, one of our team members who's totally focused on customers. And I want to talk a little bit about something I hear owners say all the time, which is, my employees aren't doing what I say. I tell them to do things and they're not following through. I make it super, super clear. I don't know why they're not getting it.
Right, they're having a massive communication breakdown, right?
Absolutely.
It happens all the time. And you think to yourself, how could it be more clear? I mean, I laid it exactly down. Here's what happens when you have a communication with anybody. It could be a client, it could be a significant other. There is three components to it. So the first component is called the business side, the second component is called the human side, and the third component is called the hidden side. And let's focus on the business side and the human side. People tend to skew one way or the other. They like to they feel more comfortable in the business side, and you know those type of people. They're like usually type A. They want the numbers. You walk in their office, They're like, hey, give me the numbers. They give them the stats. Where's the spreadsheet? They're like 5 minutes, in and out. And that's what they feel very comfortable talking about. Then you got people who live in the human pool. They like to have that touchy-feely conversation like, hey, how's your kid? How's your son? How's the baseball game? Did you watch your movie? They kind of got to get that out of their system. And then once that's out, then they can start talking about business. And what we've been taught our whole lives is what we've been trying to do is we try to pull people into our communication style. If I'm and I'm definitely in the deep end of the human side, I love to have those little conversations.
And I'm probably a little bit in the middle, more the business side.
Yeah, a little on the business side.
I think one is like, I want data and information, and the other one is like, I want interaction and connectivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you look at a person, you want to try to figure out which side do you think that they skew more towards. And I'm going to talk to that person that way. If I'm talking to a person who's really into the business side, rather than wasting their time, because that's what they would think it was if I'm doing that like small hands talk, I'm just going to go right into like, hey, this is what we have going on. I'll be able to communicate clearly and they'll understand it. Because if I go into that person and I'm talking about my son or what's going on in my life, they tune out and then they're not going to listen to my message. That's why we get that communication breakdown. On the reverse of that, if I'm a business-oriented person and I'm going to somebody who's more on the human side, and I'm just going right to it, it's very jarring to that person. They're like, and it kind of scares them a little bit, and so they'll miss a lot of your message because they're just trying to, they start thinking like insecurities, like, does this person not like me? Why didn't they talk to me? What's going on? It has nothing to do with your message, it's the way that you're actually presenting that message. So you want to pull the person and talk the way that they talk. If you notice that they talk about their cat a lot, you can mention the cat and then get to the point. If you notice they never talk about anything, it's just business, let's just go right to business.
So you're a business person, you're the owner, you're like like just get to the point, right? Brass tacks.
Yeah.
And then you have an employee that really wants that more emotional side of things.
Yeah.
It pains you to have that conversation.
It's
How
hard.
do you do it?
It's very hard because as the owner, you're like, your time is money, right? We're on a razor-thin margin. We've got a lot to do. I don't have time to be doing this.
A lot of stress, a lot of pressure.
And so people are like, I don't have time to do this. It's not important. But here's what happens. If you don't do that, then you have these communication breakdowns where then you have to go back to the client and re-say it again and re-say it again. You end up spending more time. So it's easier if you're even though you're a type A person, if you go talk to your employee and you have that little human interaction with them, like, hey, how was your weekend? How are things going? How's your husband or wife? How are your kids? And kind of get that out of the way. Then you won't have to go back and have this conversation again because they will understand it and they will appreciate it. It'll save you time and money. Might be a little bit difficult at the beginning, but as you start to read to people, you'll start putting them in boxes: human, business, and you'll start being able to talk to them exactly that way.
So why does that make sort of like this difference between telling somebody something and they listen, or they hear, truly hear it? Why does it make them more likely to hear what you're saying if you do this style of communication?
It's great because you're actually communicating in a way that they communicate in. So rather than me trying to communicate in my style and hopefully you listen, I'm now starting to communicate in a way that they communicate in. They're very familiar with it. They understand. They're like, okay, he's talking to me. Now he's going to get to my points. Okay, this is what he wants to do. And now I know what my takeaways are. So it makes it easier for them to understand it. Because our communication styles are so vastly different. It's like speaking French and German sometimes to the same people. Even though it's in English, they don't understand what they're saying.
Yep.
But when I start to communicate in their native tongue, they're like, oh, they're going to listen to it. Now, one of the things that we haven't mentioned upon is that hidden dimension. I talked about that. There's a human side, there's a business side. This hidden dimension is the most powerful thing, and you have to really be aware of it. Be like a detective. because it impacts how people feel. If you've had a really bad experience that morning, like you found out that your dog got hit by a car, or you found out that maybe your child just at school just got expelled for something they did that was kind of dumb, it puts you in a bad mood, and they're already on the defensive. So you start talking to somebody, if you can see that the way their body language is, their hidden dimension is starting to kind of peek through a little bit. You see that they're angry, you're like, this might not be the perfect time to communicate because of what's going on.
So they're trying to keep composure, but you're seeing some emotion pop through that's not normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that'll kind of let you know there's a red flag here. This message might not go through.
They're not acting themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. On the flip side of that, they might have had something really positive. Like maybe like the night before, they got engaged to their boyfriend or girlfriend, and like everywhere they're walking, they feel like rose petals are falling out of their pockets. They're like, So when you talk to them, it's a little bit easier because now they're in a really happy mood, but their mind might be out in the clouds. It might be in Pluto. It's like out there, so you need to kind of focus it in on them. So look for that hidden dimension and like, how are they behaving? Is it just normal? And a lot of times it's just day to day, it's hard to determine, but there'll be those little red flags every once in a while. You can see that they hang up the phone a little bit faster, or they're like wrestling papers, or they're like sitting there.
So let's say you see somebody in that state, what do you do?
Well, the thing is, at that point, you got to let them kind of empty their bucket. We've talked about this before, is dumping their bucket. Whatever is irritating or agitating at that particular point, they've got to kind of work through it. You can offer support and say, hey, I noticed something's going on. Is there anything going on? If they refuse to talk about it, at that point, you've acknowledged it. They at least are aware that you know that something's going on. They might not want to talk about it. At that point, you can continue on with your communication.
Okay.
It's just really hard when you burst through that door. If they're upset and you start talking to them, you just need to acknowledge it. Depending on the person, some people, going back to the business person and the human person, the business person will probably clam up like, I don't want to talk about this. And they'll tell you everything's fine, this is fine. But now they're going to be focused on what you're going to talk about. A human person might be like, no, I'm not. My dog ran away and I can't focus on that. And so then you have that conversation with them.
It's interesting because the typical business owner might go, well, it's the employee's fault that they're not getting it. They suck. These guys, just why do I have this team?
Yeah.
Like nobody can do what I can do. I'm the mastermind here, right? And there's probably some truth in the sense that like they are special as the business owner.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is actually the business owner takes responsibility for that communication and ups their emotional intelligence.
Yes,
basically.
absolutely. And you get that, and there is like a lot of ego in that because as you said, and there's no doubt the business owner is going to be the most invested, and they want their business to succeed at a higher level than just their normal employees because it's their baby, right?
Yep.
And so they want everybody to communicate the way that they're communicating, and it causes a lot of frustration because like, why aren't they listening to me? The best leaders are the ones who are going to go into the other camps and talk to those people in their way that they like to communicate. Because you're going to get it, and what will happen as a benefit to you, you're going to start getting information coming back because they'll start communicating to you like, oh, did you know this? And that becomes a trust factor. You're going to get a lot more information, they'll hear your message, and you'll be actually a more effective leader.
Okay. So best practice here, get your emotional intelligence up. Start working with your employee in the way that they can understand. And even if it's a little annoying, go through it because the end result is they will hear you and they will follow through in a much better way. So I'd love to hear everybody put some comments down below about ways that they've learned to talk to employees. There's, I'm sure, a lot of times where you feel like you guys are on different planets. How do you get people on the same page? How do you set the right expectations? Share some best practices below.